Grace and peace to you. Friends, do you have a set of fancy crockery? You know, the plates that you use when you have guests or are feeling fancy. We do. It's inherited from my wonderful Uncle Bill and Auntie Lindy. I have a set of posh crockery. It sits in the cupboard in our dining room, and serving bowls and the massive charger looking like oddities in and amongst the wine glasses. There's the coffee pot and 3 full sets of bowls and 3 full sets of different sized plates. And to my delight, we have 2 of these, 2 full-size gravy boats. It all sits in the cupboard. Fancy crockery in the cupboard in the dining room. This crockery is the best part of 100 years old. It's got gold leaf on it. So what do we do with it? We use it any time we feel like it. It might just be that we fancy a posh little cup for drinking juice in the treehouse. It might be that a Wednesday night dinner just needs that bit more something. What's the point in having these lovely things and not using them? In our reading today, we hear about the transfiguration of Jesus. That moment when we hear and recognize that Christ was fully divine. That moment when we see that Jesus is more special than all the fancy crockery in the world. The pristine, glowing Christ, who we could understandably misconstrue to be something to be looked at far away in the distance. But there's more to it than that. So let's hear our reading now.
This morning's reading is from Mark chapter 9, verses 2 to 9, the Transfiguration. 6 days later, Jesus took Peter, James, and John and led them up a high mountain to be alone. As the men watched, Jesus' appearance was transformed and his clothes became dazzling white, far whiter than any earthly bleach could ever make them. Then Elijah and Moses appeared and began talking with Jesus. Peter exclaimed, "Rabbi, it's wonderful for us to be here. Let's make 3 shelters as memorials. 1 for you, 1 for Moses, and 1 for Elijah." He said this because he didn't really know what else to say, for they were all terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my dearly loved son. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, Moses and Elijah were gone, and they saw only Jesus with them. As they went back down the mountain, he told them not to tell anyone what they had seen, until the Son of Man had risen from the dead.
Thank you, Rachel. This is a reading that some of you will have heard many times. It's a reading that ties together how we might respond to a physical encounter with the divine and that dual nature of Christ, the fully human and fully divine Christ who has walked this earth and knows what it's like to be us. In the reading, Peter and James and John could not help being awestruck by the presence of the illuminated Christ. They were blown away by the sight of the heroes of their faith in Elijah and Moses. And in response to this holiest of holy experiences, what they do is a wonderful example to us all. First thing they do, once they've gathered themselves and are ready to respond, is something practical. They set about building shelters whilst trying to make sense of what they have witnessed. They could not, in their frightened state, think of anything else to do other than build something with their hands. They might have done this to create a memorial of the encounter. They might have been building a physical shelter for Jesus, Elijah, and Moses. Whatever, they encountered God and in response got practical. As Christians, as a church, we find and encounter God in different ways. When we can, we sing hymns, we read the Bible, and we try to understand it, and we discuss things and ask questions. We listen to sermons and reflections. We take time to sit in the quiet of a small room or in the peaceful grandeur of a mountainside. We can find God anywhere and be filled by the Spirit of God and all that she does in any place. We can have, in some way or another, that mountaintop encounter. But then what do we do? Do we keep Jesus for Sunday best, learning and praising and seeking to love our neighbour in fancy clothes and polite words? Or do we reach into the cupboard and take the fanciest of all plates out to the garden to feed ourselves and the birds? It's very easy to see the holiness of Christ and recognise the specialness of it all, and seek to wrap it up in careful words, and seek to keep it pristine. However, the example of God, the thing that Christ does immediately after the bright and wondrous moment, is to walk back down the hill. This is a clear example of the entwining of heaven and earth. As we encounter the divine, as our response in the moment can be nothing other than awe and wonder. But after that, we are to set about building shelters on the mountain and go back down the mountain. Our job is to take the fancy crockery from the dining room and use it to feed the hungry. We are to pick up the cups and take them to the streets to give the thirsty a drink. Your fancy plates are of no use if you just keep them on the shelf gathering dust. An encounter with the divine is of no use if it doesn't lead to heading back down the mountain and getting your hands dirty. So go. Go to the mountaintop and seek holy encounters. Go to the mountaintop and put your hands to work. Go knowing that heaven and earth are entwined and that you are called to get your hands dirty with God. Amen.